Tuesday, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam reiterated her desire for a peaceful resolution to the city's crisis. But how receptive will the public be to her plans for community outreach? Meanwhile, up in space, India fell just short of its dream to safely land a vehicle on the moon. How close is India to becoming the fourth nation to achieve this feat? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. Carrie Lam is continuing with her efforts to restore peace to Hong Kong. At a regular press conference on Tuesday, the chief executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region reiterated her sincerity to start a dialogue with the people. She once again appealed to the public to reject violence and said she and other officials will soon meet with various communities. Can Lam's approach mend the rift in society, especially with the young protesters who have turned violent? Otherwise, what's the way out of the current impasse? Joining our discussion from Hong Kong is Witman Hung, who serves as a deputy from Hong Kong in China's top legislature, the National People's Congress. In our Beijing studio, Qinduo, a senior fellow with the Pangoal Institution, a Beijing-based think tank. And from London via Skype is John Ross, a senior fellow with the Chongyang Institute at Renmin University of China. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Now, the Hong Kong government has agreed to formally withdraw the bill. However, the violence has yet to stop. The Hong Kong police said on Monday that a total of 157 people have been arrested for violent acts in different parts of the city from last Friday to early Monday. Some violent protesters vandalized metro stations, but the protesters' attempts to interrupt the airport's operation was failed. Now, Mr. Hung, from your observation, what is the current situation in the city? Is there any sign of Hong Kong moving toward order?
Unfortunately, no. I do not see any signs of we really moving back to the peaceful city we used to be. Yeah, I was actually in Causeway Bay on Sunday for a family dinner, and then as soon as I walked into the restaurant, the manager told me that the whole shopping arcade had been shut off because there was violence outside. So I finished my dinner and then rushed home, but you know, the rest of the evening there was no business for the full shopping mall. And then, of course, on TV, we saw these people setting fire to the central subway station and a few other things. I understand the chief executive have been, pledging to, have more dialogues. I actually saw her yesterday at lunch, where she was telling us that even though the outside has not been calmed down yet, she will still try with her, team to go to meet with people, various aspects of people. I think the difficulties are, a few. First of all, is that this is a leaderless protest.
Yeah, let's talk about the difficulties in just a moment. Yes, let me give our audience a little bit more context when answering questions on Tuesday about why the withdrawal of the bill has not quelled the protest. Lam said the offer of full actions to start dialogue, as Mr. Hung just mentioned, was not just directly to stop these violence. It was really to extend her sincerities to start a dialogue. She mentioned the 4 points she raised during a televised address. First, the government will formally withdraw the bill. Second, the government will fully support the work of an independent police complaints council to investigate any unethical conduct on the part of the police. And then she said she and her principal officials will reach out to the community to start a direct dialogue. And fourth, she will invite community leaders and professionals and academics to independently examine and review society's deep-seated problems and to advise the government on finding solutions. I want to go to Qinduo here in the Beijing studio. I noticed that she made the difference between her 4-point action in its effectiveness in stopping the violence as in its in her expression of a sincerity to start dialogue. Why do you think she has to stress the difference between these two ultimate aims?
Of course, Carrie Lam didn't specify the exact reason, but I would say I think she probably didn't expect with the official withdrawal of the bail, and then order and peace will be restored in Hong Kong. And she probably expected the further chaos and further violence in Hong Kong despite the withdrawal of bail. What she was looking for is really to start a sincere dialogue between the government and the protesters and the public. So it's like you are dealing with the root causes of the protest, so people can really start something meaningful to really solve the problem, the grievances of the public, and then the government, with the help of the public, can find the real solution to the problems Hong Kong faces right now.
Some, however, has indeed criticized Lam's decision to withdraw the bill as too little too late, and that she didn't address some other demands, although she said she has addressed all of the aspirations of the movement. And just now, Mr. Hung was also talking about the difficulties that Carrie Lam is faced with at this moment in order to really start the dialogue and really see the violence stop. Mr. Ross in London, what do you think is the possibility that the four-point action outlined by Carrie Lam's administration in addressing people's concerns so that the violence can stop and a genuine dialogue can start at the same time?
Well, I know I was in London's government for 8 years, and I wouldn't try to double guess what the police and other forces are dealing with on the ground. They have to take sometimes literally life and death decisions in minutes, and I know that from that you've got to be in the middle of the situation, so I can't comment on that. What I do know about the situation, there's two groups of people involved in these protests. One is people who seem to have complaints about what may well be some serious issues in Hong Kong. Inequality is very great in Hong Kong, house prices are too high in Hong Kong, and so on. But secondly, there is the violence in particular, and the leadership comes from people who have an agenda that they can't even openly state. These are people who, in the most extreme cases, support Hong Kong separatism. They're people who are supported openly from the United States. Just to take a few people, like Martin Lee, for example, is supported by the National Endowment for Democracy, which receives a grant from the US Congress. Joshua Wong has close links with Marco Rubio. In fact, Marco Rubio nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. These people are not interested in a dialogue. They're not interested in they're not even actually interested in the demands which they stand support for. They want to create disruption within Hong Kong in a pursuit of other agenda. And the key strategic choice of Hong Kong government is to separate out people who may have some legitimate grievances from people who have a quite different political agenda, and that's the strategic issue in Hong Kong.
So, Mr. Ross, how do you see the possibility that Ms. Carrie Lam can really start to address some of the deep-rooted problems, given the two different camps that she's faced with?
Well, there's two different ones. One is the course of the law will have to take its course. I mean, if you throw a Molotov cocktail, a Molotov cocktail is a deadly weapon. You can kill somebody with a Molotov cocktail with no trouble at all. And people who do such things have to be dealt with by the law. I mean, they are treated extremely leniently by international standards in Hong Kong. If you were to throw a Molotov cocktail at an American police force, I would think you would have a very significant chance of them just opening fire on you and you ending up dead. Those people have to be dealt with by the law. The question of what to deal with on the other issues is a question of the general orientation of the Hong Kong authorities. Almost 20% of Hong Kong's population lives below the poverty line in Hong Kong, which is sharp contrast to the situation in mainland China. I know the poverty line in Hong Kong is higher than it would be in mainland China, but nevertheless, this is a serious economic issue. house prices are too high. And these are strategic things that the government has to deal with. These are legitimate things that it should be looking at.
Okay. Well, one of Carrie Lam's proposed 4 actions is to establish a dialogue platform to invite people to discuss the deep-seated problems that Mr. Ross just mentioned. Mr. Horn, you were talking about the difficulties that Carrie Lam could be faced with in trying to initiate these dialogue. Would you like to elaborate a little bit? And despite the difficulties, do you think her 4-point action plan is on the right track?
Well, the first question, the answer is the difficulty, first of all, if you want to have a dialogue with the protesters, it's a leaderless, at least claim to be leaderless protest. So nobody can represent the protesters. If you want to negotiate with them on the demands, you can't. Because no matter what you give, you cannot take. Because nobody can represent the protesters to give you. So that's number one. Number two, I think have a very thorough dialogue with the various stakeholders, various aspects of the whole society is necessary and important. Can it be done? I am not sure. I think they're trying. I don't know how, but you know, it has to be, first of all, you have to create a common awareness that needs to be a talk. Okay, so it's not just property prices, there are other things. There's upward mobility, the so-called injustice, there's all kinds of things. Some of them are perceived problems, some of them are real problems. Okay, I mean, I think fundamentally what we need to review is under the one country, two system. We have 2 systems, right? Mm-hmm. One is the socialist system on a part of mainland China. The other one is the so-called capitalist system in Hong Kong. Yeah. But what kind of capitalist system? Okay, you have the European model, you have the American model, you have the Northern European model. So we need to figure out what is the best, because if you think about it, 49% of Hong Kong people are house owners, property owners. The other 51 are without property. There's a fundamental conflict on almost half of the population. If property price goes down for 90%, the 49 people will go rioting. Okay, they will protest. If property price keep as high as it is today, the 51 people are those on the street.
So at the end of the day, yeah,
very hard.
I know the dilemma, but at the end of the day, it seems, and let me give Qinduo one more opportunity to elaborate here, it seems that these are socio-economic issues, right? It will take socio-economic approaches, of course, political will and administration on the part of the SAR government to address these issues, but these are not a problem that arise because of so-called the erosion of one country, two systems by the central government in Beijing. These are the problems that arise from the economic structure of Hong Kong.
Well, absolutely. This is a good point. If you look at, in a sense, the problems now in Hong Kong is the result of the globalization. You can at least point your finger to that. If you look at what happened in the US and Britain in 2016, you have the election of Donald Trump, which is a surprise for a lot of people, and also 2016 Brexit, people voted to leave European Union. And now in Hong Kong, you do see the gap between rich and poor, between the haves and have-nots. So this is the gap, and it's so wide that some of the young people, as described in the media, they feel hopeless for their future. They find it impossible to purchase, to afford, to have an apartment, or to get married, or to have opportunity in terms of career development. So these are kind of challenges. I think you have to find one way or another to deal with it. It's a really governance issue. It's not about having more freedom or have election or have somehow to fix one country, two systems. No, it has little to do with that. You know, in Britain, in the US, you have, of course, you cannot say they don't have freedom or democracy. But in the US, you do feel the anger of the people in the lower and the middle class. In the UK too.
So you think that it is a similar situation in Hong Kong as well? Well, of course, I understand a lot of the young people will disagree with them, but that's why a dialogue is necessary. And I understand that Carrie Lam is saying that she needs to go and have a dialogue with the people, with the communities, right, instead of... I haven't heard she talking about having a dialogue with the violent protesters. Rather, she talked about them needing to be handled according to law. So time limited, we have to leave it there. Many thanks to my guests, Witman Hung, the Hong Kong Deputy a Hong Kong deputy to China's top legislature, Qinduo from the Pangoal Institution, and John Ross from Chongyang Institute of Renmin University. You're watching The Point. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, India came so close to becoming a lunar landing country. What has prevented the mission from being accomplished? Stay with us.